Hello, welcome to another episode of Yamsock's ASMR. Today we're going to be listening to another of Sri Krishna Bhagavan's discourses in the Bhagavad Gita. If you're listening to this in the timeline that these videos have come out, there has been a significant gap between the last episode and this one. In the interest of getting right to the reading, I'll talk about it after we read. Today we are reading from the 8th chapter, I believe. Allow me to find the 8th chapter. Somehow I skipped past 9 and went all the way to 7. Must be in between. There we are. Here we are reading Chapter 8, The Imperishable Supreme. I think this will be a good chapter. I really like the later chapters, and we're almost halfway through the book now. Alright. Before I begin, make sure you're feeling comfortable, ears open, ready to listen to the Dharma. You are welcome to be here and just relax. Chapter 8, The Imperishable Supreme. At the beginning of Chapter 8, this chapter, Arjuna, befuddled by so many concepts introduced to him at the end of the previous chapter, requests Lord Krishna to clarify their meanings, which the compassionate Lord gladly does. I relate to Arjuna. Maybe that's why we had a delay, so you could process the last chapter. By studying this chapter, we, the students of God's divine song, can get an even deeper insight into the true nature of the Lord and the best ways to approach Him. Arjuna says to Lord Krishna, "O Purushottam, what is Brahman, the all-pervading Supreme Soul, God, the ultimate reality? What is Adhyatma, the individual soul pervading all beings? What is Karma, material action? What is Adibhuta, the perishable consciousness existing in material beings, including humans? And what is Adidaiva, the limited divine consciousness existing in the demigods?" This comes from the last verse of the last chapter, the previous chapter, the 30th verse of chapter 7, where Krishna concludes with, "Those who perceive me in the physical manifestations, material beings, Adibhuta, in the godly beings, demigods, Adidaiva, and also in sacrifices, as the beneficiary, Adiyagna, with their minds thus engaged, one can perceive me even at the time of death." Actually, the last two verses, verse 29, the verse before that, mentions those who strive for liberation from old age and death, taking refuge in me, know that Brahman, Krishna himself, everything about the self, soul, Adhyatma, and about actions, karma. Arjuna continues, "O Madhusudana, what is Adhyagna, the supreme beneficiary of all sacrifices, God? And how Adhyagna dwells in the material body? And how at the time of death can you be known to the self-disciplined ones?" Great questions from Arjuna. That's why Shri Krishna picked him. Lord Krishna replies to Arjuna, of course. I'm just gonna take a sip of water. Actually, this water bottle has good ASMR properties. It rings like a bell. Okay, enough dilly-dallying. Lord Krishna replies to Arjuna, Brahman is the indestructible and supreme one, God, or Godhead even. His essential nature is Adhyatma, the individual soul, action causing material beings to take birth by binding them to the material world is known as karma. O best of the souls, Adibhuta is the perishable physical manifestation, the body itself. Adidaiva is the divine consciousness of the Supreme Person, dwelling in the demigods, and I, the spirit within the body of every being, being the object of all sacrifices and devotion, am Adiyagna. And whoever, in the last moments of their life, while quitting the body, goes forth remembering me alone, attains my being by gaining oneness with Krishna. There is no doubt about this. Whatever state of being one remembers in the end while giving up their body, O Kaunteya, that very state they will attain because of their persistent thought of it. That's one of the most important verses in all of the Bhagavad Gita. This 6th verse from the 8th chapter. It defines how the process of reincarnation actually works. This is why usually you won't listen to the whole chapter of a Bhagavad Gita at once. Each verse has some truth that may take a whole day to elaborate on by a qualified teacher. Because I don't know the secret teachings of every verse, I can only elaborate on a few of them. But this verse explains that because of our persistent thought during the course of our life of anything in particular, our next birth is attained along the trajectory of that final thought. You could say that it is your last thought which finally manifests your next body to fulfill whatever lasting desire or imprint remains in one's mind. I'll elaborate more on that. For example, it's said, at least according to Vedic scripture, that spiritually speaking, the difference between humans and other animals is that humans have the capacity of yajna, of sacrifice, that we can perform austerities. We can surrender temporary pleasures and attain ultimate peace through various means of austerity. Whereas the other animals are constantly in pursuit of mates, shelters, and food sources. Unfortunately, according to this logic, many humans may also be reborn into an animal if all we do in this life is think about these three things just in a human flavor, a human variant. Instead of searching for a mate, we're searching for our soulmate. Instead of searching for a shelter, we're searching for final financial security, for a nice house that'll make us feel complete. And instead of searching for a food source, we're going in search of the perfect meal to put on our Instagram story, or the perfect diet, or whatever. These things are great, no doubt about that. We need food, we need people in our life to love, and we need shelter as well. But if it's the only thing we're pursuing in life, then we're not fulfilling the unique quality of the human being, which is an especially empowered buddhi, Sanskrit word for intellect, which is able to transcend these mind desires and go forth in spiritual transcendence. That is why it's important to constantly keep your mind on higher and higher things, so that at the time of death, our thought takes us into a very favorable next life. So it's not just a reincarnation lottery. Let's continue. Therefore, always remember me and fight. Dedicating your mind and intelligence unto me alone, you will attain me without doubt. Now think about this. If your mind is on Krishna at the time of death, and to you Krishna represents all that which is ultimate to attain, then you will attain the ultimate. Easier said than done, however, as many people who go through near-death experiences explain that our life flashes before our eyes, and without a doubt there will be many aspects of our memories which draw us back into material thinking, as beautiful as it is. So in some sense, that moment of death is the final challenge. Can we still surrender our mind unto the divine and forgive ourselves for all our mistakes, accept all that has happened, and bring our mind to higher things? They who, with a mind not deviating from other things, is engaged in abhyasa yoga, the regular practice of meditation on the Supreme Divinity, meditating on the effulgent Supreme Persona, O Bharta, reaches him by constantly thinking of him. One who meditates upon the omniscient, the most ancient, the controller, smaller than the atom, the maintainer of all, of inconceivable form, luminous like the sun, beyond the darkness, the ignorance. At the time of death, with an undeviating mind, engaged in devotion fully by the power of yoga, regular practice of meditation, fixing their life breath between the eyebrows, the third eye, certainly attains the supreme effulgent person. This chapter goes into the precise esoteric means of liberation. It's a good one. And I love that 9th verse about meditating upon the omniscient, the most ancient, the controller, smaller than the atom, the maintainer of all, of inconceivable form, luminous like the sun, beyond darkness, etc. Because these are very powerful thoughts. They're profound ideas and qualities of the infinite. Just upon meditating upon them, we attain higher and higher states of consciousness because they expand our perception and cause us to dissolve our limited perception. That which the knower of the Vedas, remember the Vedas are, in this tradition, humanity's oldest scriptures, from which the Bhagavad Gita is the ultimate distillation thereof. That which the knowers of the Vedas declare as the imperishable, that into which the ascetics and renunciants enter, that desiring which they practice celibacy. The method of attaining that goal I shall explain to you in brief. And by the way, the word celibacy here is something deep and mystical. It doesn't just refer to the refraining of sex, because I believe the word that's being described is brahmacharya, which literally translates to Brahma, ultimate, acharya, way of. brahmacharya, way of the ultimate. It refers to redirecting one's sexual energies towards the highest creation. It also refers to not letting any sort of energy within you leak out. I think that's a good description. Closing all the gates of the senses, confining the mind and the heart, fixing the life breath in the head, and thus engaging in the practice of yoga, meditation on the Supreme, chanting the divine syllable, Om, the holy word of Brahman, and remembering me. They who quit the body certainly attains the supreme goal. And in this devotional context, that's Krishna's association. I am easily attained by that yogi who regularly and constantly remembers me without ever deviating to other things, O Partha. Having attained me, the great souls, having reached the highest perfection, never take birth again in the temporary place full of miseries, the material world. O Arjuna, all material worlds up to the world of Brahma, the Creator, the most senior of all created gods, are subject to repeated births. But upon reaching me, O Kaunteya, there is no rebirth in any of the material worlds. Some commentary from the author. In these verses, the Supreme Lord Krishna elegantly expresses the divine truths, knowing which one can understand the goal of one's life and then seek to accomplish it. Krishna repeatedly stresses upon meditating on him with single-pointed devotion, without getting distracted by any material attractions. After accomplishing this, one's thoughts become grounded in the Lord. Quitting this body with such a mindset certainly opens for the yogi the door to God's divine abode, reaching where a soul never needs to return to this temporary place full of miseries, quote unquote. Loving devotion to the Lord surely paves the way for the liberation of the devotee. Krishna continues, those who know the day of Brahma, Brahma is the Lord's creator form, which runs for 1,000 ages, and the night, which also runs for 1,000 ages, they truly know, quote-unquote day, quote-unquote night. This is almost a biblical sounding verse, even though this is much more ancient than the Bible. Well, much more ancient than the New Testament. The Old Testament is sometimes in a comparable chronology to the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. And I am referring to Genesis, in which God in the Hebrew Bible talks about, or he doesn't talk, it's talked about God having created the world in 7 days. Well, in the Hindu tradition, there are also talks of so-called days of God, but there's something more metaphorical. A day of God is a very, very long time. Just like I think somewhere in the Christian tradition it's mentioned that a day in heaven lasts for a lot longer than a day on earth. And heaven, of course, being the abode of God. That's a fun multi-faith overlap. At the coming of day, all beings become manifest from the unmanifest state, and at the coming of night they dissolve verily into what is called the unmanifest. Being born again and again, O Partha, the same throng of beings are annihilated into the unmanifest state. Helplessly at the coming of night, and they again manifest at the coming of day. So even at the end of a whole cycle of creation, since there is a cyclical cosmology, those who do not become liberated, they still become manifest in the next cycle of creation. Small commentary. This is how the universe actually works. When compared to the age of creation, our lifetime, no matter how long or short it appears to us, is insignificant, ultimately. But, Krishna continues, there exists another unmanifested nature, Krishna's divine home, transcendental to that unmanifest nature, where souls go after annihilation of body before returning to the material world, the mortal world, which is eternal and is not annihilated when the manifested nature, the mortal world, is annihilated. Krishna adds, that which is said to be the unmanifest nature, the imperishable, is thus known as the highest goal, reaching which one never returns to this mundane material world. That is my supreme abode. Commentary. In the last two verses, the Lord has mentioned 3 levels of planets. The word here is probably loka, which often gets translated to planet, or maybe be more accurate to say a plane of existence, or a locale, a location, I think is etymologically where we get these English words from, the Sanskrit word loka. The lowest among which are the mortal worlds, such as the earth, full of pains and suffering. Higher than that are the planets where the souls go to dwell after leaving the material bodies, depending on the collective status of their karma. If their actions were virtuous, they go to the heavenly planets, and if evil, they go to the hellish planets. There they will enjoy or suffer punishment respectively, and once the effects of their karma have been negated, they are returned to the mortal world. That's a very important distinction between the concept of heaven and hell in this tradition and in, for example, Abrahamic traditions. In the Abrahamic tradition, there is often a connotation of a permanent residency in heaven or in hell. However, this is not the case according to karma. According to karma, no finite action can lead to an infinite result. Therefore, according to our karma, we have so long of a stay in heaven or hell. And this becomes even more pertinent if we understand heaven and hell to be states of being which occur on the level of consciousness. That is also why liberation, enlightenment requires continual effort, as it is more of a process than a destination. There they enjoy or suffer punishment respectively, and once the effects of their karma have been negated, they are returned to the mortal world. However, the really pious souls, being the true devotees of the Lord, who become perfected in yoga while living their material lives, go directly to God's realm, the highest planet of all, to enjoy divine bliss forever, to never return to the lower planets or planes of existence. The transcendental person, God, O this is Krishna, can be attained by unalloyed devotion to him alone, within whom all beings dwell, and by whom all that exists, beings and objects, is pervaded. I shall now explain to you, O best among the descendants of Bharata, the times at which the yogis, those who strive for liberation, depart from this world to never come back, as also to come back. This is a very interesting series of verses. Fire, light, daytime, the bright fortnight, the 6 months of the northern solstice, following this path, passing away in these times. Those who know the Brahman go to the Brahman, the ultimate reality. Smoke, nighttime, also the dark fortnight, and the 6 months of the southern solstice. The yogi, following this path, who passes away in these times, having attained the moonlight, a heavenly illusion, returns to the material world. The paths of light and darkness, these two ways of passing from this world, are verily considered to be eternal. By one, the path of light, a person goes not to return. By the other, the path of darkness, they return again. Knowing these two paths, O Partha, a yogi is never deluded. Therefore, at all times, remain steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. The yogi who knows this goes beyond all declarations in the Vedas regarding the rewards springing from righteous deeds, performing sacrifices, undergoing penances, or doing charity. They reach the supreme and the original state by attaining liberation. That's the end of this chapter. And that final verse refers to how the Vedas are in two parts, the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. The Karma Kanda is all about action, all about rewards springing from righteous deeds, performing sacrifices, undergoing penances, or doing charity. It is said that that's the lower portion of the Vedas, all about aparavidya, lower knowledge. But the Jnana Kanda is all about higher knowledge, wisdom, jnana. Knowing this portion of the Vedas, the knowledge of the scriptures, we go beyond these things and attain the ultimate. Our author has some final commentary. Unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna is the key to liberation. And you can see the Lord is doing his best to make it absolutely clear to us, the seekers. The Vedas contain details about several rituals which can easily provide us with all the pleasure we may desire in this world or the heavenly world. But those rituals can never free us. We would always be susceptible to pain and misery, as we would be forced to return to this world of suffering every time we die. Reaching God is the only solution, and the only way to do that is to worship Him, the blissful Lord Krishna, not superficially, but by gaining knowledge of Him, by constantly meditating on Him, by always working for Him, and finally, by developing true transcendental love for Him. This will ensure that we leave our bodies at the best time, in the best manner, in the desired mental state, assuring our deliverance and eternal stay with Him. Thank you for listening. That was Chapter 8. Next time, we'll read Chapter 9, The Royal Secret. I hope you enjoyed that chapter. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I would comment on why there was a gap between the this one. To put it in simple terms, I've been sleeping in. I try to record these before I go live on TikTok every day, and I've been sleeping in to the point where I haven't had a chance. Even as I record this now, I'm now half an hour late to my own Sangha. But you here deserve to listen to the Bhagavad Gita also, which is much more important than my Sangha in terms of spiritual wisdom, as this scripture has survived thousands of years of peer review and is the ultimate manual on spiritual things. I am but a novice. The reason I have been staying up late and waking up late as well, is related to my devotional practices. I have been on medication, which duels as an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, and also as a sleep medication. It also is used to increase appetite, which these were 4 aspects of my life: anxiety, depression, sleep, and appetite that I struggled with. So my doctor prescribed it to me, and it really helped me. But now that I've developed a lot of faith in the divine, I look at the pill that I take every night and I think, I am giving this the power, the same power that the divine gives me. I could redirect my faith to the divine, and I'll have that with me always, thus I do not need this pill. Now, of course, I'm not saying to go against your doctor's wishes. I do believe in the efficacy of modern medicine, and as I mentioned, this medication really does help for me. My doctor is aware that I take some liberty with my medication, and there's a mutual trust and good communication. But for me, I take it as a yajna, as a sacrifice, so that I may become dependent only on the divine in my spiritual practice. So, over many months now, I've been tapering my sleep medication, and in the process, I've been having a hard time falling asleep at an appropriate time again, but I'm sure that that will return to normal as I transition off of it. I'm very close to being off of it, but I'm still not quite there. So in the meantime, there might be some delay in getting these ASMR Yam Socks videos out, but I thought I'd update you anyway. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Namaskara.